Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our health chats all about healthy eating. This is certainly one of our favorite topics, and there's a lot of questions always on healthy eating. So I'm happy to spend some time with you this morning. First of all, we want to thank our sponsors, Cyan, Blue Shield of California, and Elite Medical. And we have a bunch of topics today. So first off, I want to go over all the factors that can influence healthy eating that really aren't about eating at all. I'll also go into how the evolution of what we consider a healthy diet has really changed over time. Over the last several years, we have a really new understanding of how the body and food all interact together along with the mind and the microbiome. And that really changes the way we think about the importance of a healthy diet. I'll also go through some frequently asked questions, and then we'll have United Ag resources at the end, and then we'll also leave time for Q&A. So first off, so many factors actually affect healthy eating that really aren't about eating at all. And I have a story to tell you that really illustrates that phenomenon. So many years ago, I was working with a group of health coaches, and they were helping their members reverse health conditions such as diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, et cetera. So it was a pretty intensive program. And one of the health coaches came to me one day and he said, I have this really interesting case. I'm really struggling with this member. All of a sudden, this member's eating a ton of donuts and I don't know why. And with traditional health coaching, you would say to someone, hey, just cut back on your donuts, or maybe just have one, but don't eat the whole box. But with kind of a newer approach and newer understanding of how so many other factors affect eating behavior, the coach ended up asking the member, so, hey, what do the donuts mean to you? And this wasn't something that the member was fully aware of at the time, but what the member ended up saying was that, his grandfather recently passed away and actually owned a donut shop. And his kind of new change in eating behavior of having a lot of donuts was his way of connecting with his grandfather. And I thought that was so powerful because unless you ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, you might just kind of fall into the trap of just kind of blindly eating or not being fully aware of what's driving your behaviors. And that awareness, just understanding why you're doing what you're doing, gives you the power to change it. So I really love that story to illustrate how eating really isn't about eating most of the time. If you have kind of a basic understanding of, healthy food, you have to get your fruits and vegetables, you should have good proteins. And if you know that you shouldn't go through the drive-in at McDonald's 3 times a week, and you shouldn't have soda every day, but you still find yourself doing that, most likely there's some underlying cause of why you're having those behaviors. And on the screen here are the 4 most common reasons why people are struggling to eat healthy that have nothing to do with nutrition. The first is sleep. So chronic sleep deprivation causes you to crave high caloric foods that might actually be inflammatory. Oftentimes the body mistakes fatigue for hunger. And so that's why people's appetites usually increase when they're sleep deprived. And so you want to aim for at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And if you are having trouble sleeping at night, then you might actually need a nap during the day to help refresh yourself. But sleep is one of those core foundational lifestyle factors that if you address that first, you might find it's actually easier to eat healthy. Stress is another factor. So even stressed out animals. So they've done a lot of studies on animals that when you stress them out, they preferentially pick comfort food. And if any of you are stress eaters, I'm a stress eater myself. I know that when I'm stressed, I want comfort food. And then we often beat ourselves up that, why can't I choose the healthy option? But it's really actually your brain programmed to tell you to choose the high fat, high sugar foods, high carbohydrate foods when you're stressed out. This is just the way we're wired. There's no amount of willpower that, overrides that. That is just your brain. And so instead of kind of trying to focus on the food in those situations, really take time to focus on the stress. Similarly, with mental health, any kind of recent trauma, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of that changes people's eating behaviors, whether they're aware of it or not. And so for a lot of conditions like anxiety or depression, weight gain or weight loss is one of the key symptoms that people might be aware of first, even before they realize they have a mental health condition. And then lastly, cravings are kind of an interesting area where you might think that, oh, what you're craving something because your body needs it. And yes, that might be in certain cases. For instance, you might actually be craving salt. And if you have an adrenal issue or low blood pressure, you might actually need that extra salt. But there are other health conditions that can cause cravings that really don't match up to nutritional needs. For instance, some people with low iron actually crave ice, and that's something called pica. And for some people who are pre-diabetic or have diabetes, they often crave sugar. And that's the worst thing for their body to have. But it's because of all the hormones and extra insulin in the body that is causing people to crave sugar. And it's kind of a downward spiral in that case, unless you realize what's happening. And in those cases, you really want to talk to your doctor. Bring it up. Say, hey, I'm craving a lot of salt, sugar, or unusual things. What could that possibly mean? And your doctor can do a full workup to understand if there's a physical health condition that's causing those cravings. So if you have any of these four going on, the most important thing is to, take a step back, see what you can do in your lifestyle to address these. And if you need support from your healthcare provider to help troubleshoot, then definitely get them in the conversation. So I mentioned earlier that there is really an evolution of our understanding of what a healthy diet is. And the first slide that we went through of kind of understanding all the factors is part of that evolution. Here are other ways in which the traditional thinking has really been kind of updated over the last several years. So before, nutrition was really thought of as a way to help people lose weight. That was really a lot of the focus of nutrition. There were so many short-term diets, Slim Fast, a lot of the diet drugs were on the market several years ago. Fats were thought of as the devil and all calories were thought to be equal. And so many of the nutritional guidelines were focused on a low-fat diet that's low calories without taking into consideration how those calories impact your body. Also, it was thought that everyone should follow the food pyramid. Everyone should have, 60% of their diet as carbohydrates, and then fruits and vegetables on top of that, and then maybe a little bit of protein, and then fats are the very smallest part of that food pyramid. That doesn't apply to everyone anymore. And then lastly, in the traditional thinking was this notion that food really only impacts your body. And then now we have a much better understanding that a healthy diet really is not just about weight loss. It's actually about getting your body to work better, to make sure your metabolism is functioning well. How can you reduce inflammation and help you feel like you have more energy? We have a better understanding now that inflammation, causes everything from heart disease to dementia to autoimmune diseases. And so really the idea is, how can you get nutrients in your body to reduce that inflammation? And then there's been so many studies about what's a healthy diet, and all of them usually come down to the conclusion that a healthy diet is the one that you can sustain. So we've moved very far away from kind of doing short-term diets, and that, we really want to focus on small, meaningful changes that you can actually sustain over time. We also know that food quality matters. A great example of this is with red meat. So red meat is thought to be very inflammatory, and a lot of the studies done 10, 20, 30 years ago was looking at red meat causing increase in cholesterol. Well, it turns out that grass-fed beef and corn-fed beef have different levels of different types of fats. And the corn-fed animals end up having fats that are more inflammatory. And so even kind of the food that your food eats, like the proteins, actually matters. And also the nutrient density of your foods, making sure that you get as much nutrients along with those calories, really can make a difference. We also understand that everyone's metabolism is different and everyone processes food a little bit differently. And so your nutritional needs might vary very differently from someone who looks exactly like you. And so you really want to work with someone who can help personalize the recommendations to you. And then lastly, we now know that food not only influences your body, but it can also affect your mental health, how you're feeling emotionally, and also how your microbiome is working. And your microbiome also feeds back to your body to help reduce inflammation, to help strengthen your immune system, and to also help improve mental health and functioning. So onwards into the FAQs, probably one of the most common questions asked is, well, what's the best diet? With this idea that there is one single best diet, but as I've kind of already talked about, there really is no single best diet for everyone. There's probably a best diet for you though. And that takes into consideration your own metabolism, your medical history. Do you have any chronic conditions, especially endocrine conditions like diabetes? Do you have hypertension where you need to focus on low sodium foods, that kind of stuff? You also want to take into consideration your preferences and cultural background. Are there foods that you love growing up that you want to be able to keep in your diet? Finding ways to either have those as a treat or to find healthier substitutes for those that still kind of give you the same level of enjoyment is really important for sustainability of your diet. Also, you have to take into consideration your lifestyle demands. Are you trying to prepare food for not only yourself, but your children and perhaps elderly parents or other family members that are also in the household? And lastly is food sensitivities. So you might not have a food allergy per se, but if you feel awful after eating certain foods with things such as like gluten or dairy, then you might have a food sensitivity. And you want to make sure that your diet doesn't include those kind of things. And so some core questions to ask yourself to figure out if your current diet is working for you is, how are you feeling afterwards? Do you feel nourished and satisfied? If not, you might have to actually make some changes. Do you have enough energy? Is your food actually fueling you? Because that's what it's meant to do, right? It's meant to fuel your day. It's meant to help, give you energy to think, to exercise, to perform at work. And if it's not doing that, then there might be some changes you have to make. And then lastly, are you experiencing joy from what you're eating? Again, this goes back to sustainability. If you don't experience joy from what you're eating, if it's a struggle every time, you're not, feeling, happy with what you're eating, you're always feeling deprived, that's not going to be sustainable for very long. But there are kind of general recommendations that would probably apply to most people. It might not apply to everyone, but it would probably apply to most people. The first is to focus on a variety of whole, unprocessed foods. So things that are not sold in packaging, like fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, not like those, already made frozen foods, already made takeout, that kind of stuff. So whole unprocessed foods, like for instance, like Cheerios would not, that's a highly processed food. That doesn't look like anything that grows in nature, right? And so focus on the whole unprocessed foods, avoid trans fats and added sugar. Trans fats are highly inflammatory. They have to be listed on the nutrition label so you can look out for them. And sugar is also highly inflammatory and can lead to a lot of metabolic issues, such as insulin resistance and diabetes. And then lastly, it's important to avoid excessive alcohol. That again is very inflammatory. It can cause a lot of issues such as fatty liver disease. It also impairs your judgment. And so if you're under the influence of alcohol, you're not going to be making good decisions with your eating. A second common FAQ that I get is, should I have cheat days? And I think if you're asking if you should have a cheat day, you might actually want to check in to see if why you feel like you need a cheat day. Is your mindset too strict? Are you being too restrictive that you feel like you have all this pent up cravings for food that you feel like you haven't been able to have, and that's why you need a cheat day? So the first question is, why do you need a cheat day? So most, if you're eating a diet that's sustainable, you shouldn't necessarily feel like you need a cheat day per se. But there's always room in every diet for some healthy indulging and eating out and treats here and there. These are occasional kind of celebrations, birthdays, going out once in a while. And these are things that you can plan ahead for. And then you can have your treat and then go back to your normal eating. And there's a big difference actually between indulging and binging. And I know kind of in social media and kind of colloquial language, we often interchange these two terms, but indulging is like when you have a treat, you're really savoring it. But binging is really something that's very uncomfortable. It's taking in a lot of food, usually in a short period of time. It's amount of food that's way beyond what a normal person would eat in one sitting. And people often feel guilt, even physical discomfort afterwards, and a loss of control during binging. That is very different from, the enjoyment with indulging once in a while. And so if you have any questions about whether or not you're actually binging and it's not just indulging, then definitely talk to your healthcare provider. Tell them what you're going through, ask them for feedback, because a lot of eating disorders actually go undiagnosed. And if you're binging and that kind of behavior is getting worse, you might be actually going towards an eating disorder. And it's really important to address that early on, and then talk to your healthcare provider as soon as possible. Third, this is a question that is incredibly timely with the high inflation that we're still facing, is how can I eat healthy on a budget? We have all seen the astronomical prices of things like eggs. Back during the pandemic, prices of flour was, incredible. It seems like every week there's like a huge, change in price of the food that we have. And so there are certain tricks that you can put in place that'll help you really keep to a budget, but still eat a very healthy way. The first is to buy in bulk during sales. You can always get a larger quantity and then freeze them into kind of smaller portions. Also, prep ingredients at home. And what I mean by that is things like chopping up your vegetables at home instead of buying pre-cut things, or shredding cheese, or you could even actually prep meat at home instead. So you can marinate your own meat instead of buying pre-marinated meat, because every level of processing is a markup in price. Also, you can cook more meals at home. I actually did this analysis of one of my favorite meals that I will sometimes get for takeout is like salmon and some grains and vegetables. And I made essentially the same meal at home, and it was about a third of the price. So there's at least a 50%, if not more, markup on foods that are prepared outside your home. So being able to cook more meals at home will save a huge part of your budget. Also, especially when they're on sale, frozen fruits and vegetables are great to have on hand. They're often also easier to use in smaller portions. So sometimes fresh fruits and vegetables, especially things like berries or lettuce, will go to waste a lot because you might not be able to use them up right away. And so buying the frozen version allows you to use part of the bag of frozen fruits or vegetables and put it back in the freezer to save for another time. That also helps with reducing waste. And then try to avoid buying foods that are packaged individually, like, kind of individual packs of trail mix, any kind of individual snacks. You don't want to pay for packaging, and it's also better for the environment to have, to avoid having that packaging go into landfills. And then lastly, because we're also in ag, we can also talk about, how can you leverage community gardens or even growing things at home? So I actually like to grow a lot of herbs at home, such as chives or scallions, basil, etc. Because I always find that one, they're kind of expensive when you buy them from a store. And then I don't use up the whole portion, so I ended up wasting it. And it's also, just nice to have it grown at home, so I can just have a little snippet whenever I want it and not have to buy the whole portion. Also, if you have a community garden in your neighborhood, those are great resources to be able to get super fresh produce that actually has more nutrients than what you can buy in stores, because you're literally harvesting it straight from the farm. The last FAQ I have here is, how can I eat healthy when I'm busy? A lot of us really don't have a whole lot of time to think about our food. And so it's really important to have systems in place that make healthy eating the lazy choice. That means having, healthy snacks always available so that you're not tempted to go through the drive-in. Plan and prepare in advance. If you can, try to spend an hour or two a week on, making out your grocery list, doing really fast meal prep, so you have everything available for you to eat, instead of trying to, kind of last minute while you're really hungry, trying to figure out what to have. And then at that point, you're probably going to choose the unhealthy option. Also, take a kind of an inventory of your pitfalls in your day. So if you notice that, hey, I'm more tempted to get donuts if I drive in a certain way to work, or if I leave work in a certain direction, I really want to go through the drive-through. If you notice those patterns, try to avoid it. Try to go a different way. Break those habits that really actually make it easy for you to choose the unhealthy option. You want to do the opposite. You want to make the healthy option the easy choice. Try not to get too hungry during the day. Try not to skip meals. As I said, that often leads to choosing the unhealthy option. And try to build healthy habits into your day. Things like telling yourself you're going to have like 2 veggies with each meal, or you're going to drink water throughout the day to stay hydrated, or you just develop a habit of having a weekly meal prep day. Like maybe on Sunday, you just spend 2 hours in the morning prepping your meals for the week. And lastly, if you find that you can't prioritize feeding your body high quality fuel, then I think that's a really important moment to check in and look at where your priorities are. Because if you're not prioritizing your own health and well-being, then really ask yourself, what is more important than that? Few things are more important than that. Sure, short-term wise, there might be things that come up that you really have to address and you can't feed yourself as well. But long-term, you need to be able to prioritize feeding yourself high-quality fuel, or else you're going to pay. Your body's not going to be able to sustain itself for very long, and you can develop chronic health conditions as a result. So lastly, we have a ton of resources at United Ag to help with this. You don't have to go it alone to try to figure out what's best for you. It's actually always better to get feedback and help from someone else. As I mentioned, it's pretty complicated. You have to consider your metabolism, health conditions, preferences, etc. And we have a lot of free resources. So you should definitely take advantage of them. The first on here is the lifestyle management program at our health and wellness centers. We have incredible nutritionists on staff, and to no additional cost to you, you can have a consultation. You can, follow up with a single nutritionist that you like over and over, so that, they can follow you up on your goals and keep you accountable. It's a really fantastic program, and they work with essentially everyone. So even if you're healthy and you want to stay healthy, or you have a chronic condition like diabetes that you want to manage better, they will help you. So you don't have to have any specific conditions to be eligible for the program. Teladoc also offers nutrition services in case you want to use them as well. And then lastly, for people with diabetes, there also is the Livongo program. And Livongo is not just nutrition, but it's a way in which you're sent all your devices. So you get your glucometer, strips, lancets, everything that you need to check your blood sugar on a regular basis. The glucometer is a connected one, so it'll automatically upload the data to our provider portal as well as the app that you will download. So you can track your blood glucose over time. And if you want coaching, you can actually request that through the Livongo app as well with their coaches. So we have a ton of free resources available for you that I highly encourage you all to take advantage of. And then to close, we just want you to be aware of these dates of the upcoming episodes of Health Chats. So May 18th, we have mental health awareness. August 17th is around immunizations, and November 16th is for diabetes awareness. And with that, we'll open the floor to questions. Oh, great. Thank you, Maribel. It looks like everyone is getting unmuted, so you can talk if you want to. You can also chat in to the Q&A if you would like as well.
Don't be shy. I know this is a topic that we can all relate to.
Yeah, and I know I threw a lot at you in this presentation, so if you have questions later on, you can always reach out as well. While they might be thinking of questions, Maribel, do you want to talk about the Ag Challenge?
Sure. Well, we're excited to roll back and bring back events to our regional communities. And with that, we're hosting our first ever walkathon in Salinas Valley at Toro Park, May 21st from 11 to 3 p.m. This event called the Ag Challenge is going to be more than just a walkathon. It's also going to be a health fair. So we'll have our wellness team there on site providing complimentary A1Cs. And our member services team will also be available to answer any questions that our members may have. We'll also have our ambassador coordinator, Christina Morley, on site, also recruiting new ambassadors. And we'll also have a booth that will talk about healthy eating again and showing and displaying healthy food swaps. So all of this event, the purpose of it is really to engage with the community and promote health and wellness and encourage them to access our resources, as Dr. Rosemary mentioned. And with that, I do also want to highlight that we did host our first wellness initiative beginning of the year, actually end of 2022 and beginning of this year, which was the annual physical challenge. And we conducted 366 physicals in 4 months. So kudos to everyone that participated in that challenge. And now we invite you to the next challenge, which is the Ag Challenge. So that information regarding the Ag Challenge is available on our website, unitedag.org, and you can look for Ag Challenge 2023, and you'll find all of the information and forms necessary to register for this complimentary event. And so with that, it looks like we may have one question. Oh, Connie James is asking, can you go back one slide, Dr. Rosemary?
Yeah, I think this was the slide that she was referring to.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Any questions regarding today's presentation? I will say that I totally related with just about every segment of it, including the learning to make healthy choices. It is a lifestyle change, not something that happens overnight, but you will notice the difference.
Yes, absolutely. You will notice, and you know, you don't have to beat yourself up over the process. You know, there will be slip ups, and that's okay. That's normal and just part of trying to be healthier. Thank you, Joanne. And Jessica asked, do you know how much water has a tie in healthy eating?
Water has a tie in healthy eating?
I'm not sure I understand. Jessica, do you want to unmute and ask or clarify?
Yeah, Jessica, I just unmuted. You want to ask that question live?
Just because I hear that sometimes if you're thirsty, you get like cravings or you feel like you're hungry.
Yep.
But I don't know if you had more details about that, just because I wasn't too sure exactly like how that works with our body, or any information you may have regarding that.
Yeah, gotcha. So for some people will give out like a specific amount of water that we need each day in terms of ounces. But I actually don't like to necessarily give out a specific number because everyone's body is a little bit different for that. And then if you have health conditions like any sort of kidney disease or anything like that, you might actually not be able to drink that much water. But what I tell people is the best amount, you're well hydrated if you're going to use the bathroom, and we're going to talk about urination, you guys. Okay. So if you're going to urinate every few hours and it's like a pale yellow, and if you're not experiencing thirst per se, then you know that you're hydrated. If you're always just waiting until you're really thirsty to drink, you're probably not getting enough water. And for some reason, it's a little bit funny that when we are thirsty, our brains are basically wired for us to try to ingest things because there's actually a lot of hydration in food. If you think about it, there's a lot of water in fruits and vegetables, especially kind of the fresh versions of them. So food does contain water. And so craving food is actually one way in which we can get more moisture into our body. And so that's why oftentimes those two can be confused. But just make sure to try to stay hydrated. And you'll know that if you're going to use the bathroom every few hours, it looks pale yellow and you're not experiencing any kind of major thirst. Jessica, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Koo?
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Shobana.
Okay. As you talk about food prices, the organic food versus non-organic, organic food is really high in prices. Does that matter if we choose certain food or leafy vegetable and stuff in non-organic matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, some of the organic food and even the non-organic food right now for the produce is just is shockingly expensive. I'll tell you what I prefer to do. Everyone can kind of go by their own preferences. In a lot of the scientific research, there isn't a huge difference between the nutritional value of organic and non-organic. And if it's a choice between having fresh produce and not having fresh produce, and there's only if like kind of the non-organic version is just more economical, just go with that. And so it's not worth it, I think, for everyone to always eat organic all the time. The times that I do try to put some preference over organic is if it's something that I know I can't wash well. So things like, really delicate leafy greens, I will try to, choose organic if it's not like, shockingly expensive. Some berries that I know I'm not going to wash super well, then I'll go for the organic version. Otherwise, I personally just go non-organic, and I feel like that's fine for most people.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned washing your fruits and vegetables. What method do you use to wash, or product do you use?
I actually just use water. I know a lot of people like using baking soda, or kind of those, specific washing fluids, etc. But I honestly just try to use water. There is some benefit to, there is some microbial things that it's okay for it not to be super clean. You want some of that environmental microbes in your system. So I don't really obsess over it. So just water for me. All right. If there are no other questions, we will conclude it for today. Thank you all for your great questions. And as I said, if kind of burning questions come up over time, you can always reach out to me. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.